Tomorrow on the church calendar, indeed the global calendar, is the feast of St. Francis of Assisi, the patron saint of ecology. And for the global church, it also marks the ending of what we call the season of creation. Though truly, as we understand ourselves to be created in the image of the Creator, and as those who affirm our call to live in respect with creation, there is really no end to the season of creation. For there is no end to the work of caring for Mother Earth and our particular place in our ecosystem. We are always invited, day by day, to honor creation, to honor all creatures, to honor our Creator. For every part of this earth is sacred. Every shining pine needle, every sandy shore, every mist in the dark woods, every clearing, and every humming insect is holy. We are part of the earth, and it is part of us. The perfumed flowers are our sisters, the deer, the horse, the great eagle, these are our brothers. The rocky crests, the juices in the meadows, the body heat of the pony, humans all belong to the same family. This we know, the earth does not belong to humans. Humans belong to the earth. This we know, all things are connected, like the blood which unites one family. Whatever befalls the earth befalls the sons and daughters of the earth. We did not weave the web of life. We are merely a strand in it. Whatever we do to the web, we do to ourselves. All things are connected. And again, welcome to this space and welcome to this time of worship, whether you're in this space or joining us online. Thank you for being here, and thank you for the good spirit to which you bring to this time of worship. Today is the first Sunday in October, and today, again, as part of a global church, we gather in another celebration called World Communion Sunday. It's a celebration that traces its roots back to the 1930s and the Presbyterian Church in the USA. But it wasn't until the 1940s that really the idea of World Communion Sunday began to take root, to gather and celebrate everyone on the same day, to celebrate in the sacrament. Whatever your tradition was, to gather at table and to share in those gifts that remind us of the expansiveness, the all-encompassing nature of God's love. If you remember the 1940s in terms of the global context, it was a time of strife and war and uncertainty, and the many churches, including the World Council churches, thought to have this one unifying day might work towards the unifying of all people and all nations, to gather and share in gifts that nourish and strengthen, might strengthen our relationship with one another and the work of God in the world. And so today, many Christians around our world are gathering to share in holy gifts of bread and wine, or maybe it's tortillas and coconut juice. smiles and traditions and languages and cultures and denominations so often divide us. But at the table, we are indeed one, followers of the Christ, and called to live out the faith that we share so that all might have enough hope and enough justice, enough life, and enough bread for all. So I hope if you've joined us online, you've seen my number of announcements about World Communion Sunday and the invitation to prepare your at-home communion, be it tea and toast or cookies and juice. We welcome you and are glad that you will be with us at the table this morning. This morning is also a very unique, I think, worship gathering. Not simply is it intergenerational in nature, as our young folks will join us later as we prepare to gather at table, and we will hear the communion story in a new way, but also inspired by the 100 Tables project of our United Church. You may remember this from last June, and a reminder, a table where there is a place for all, where all are welcomed in our diversity. And so that inspired one of the members of our worship committee, and that inspired our worship committee. And today, as we prepare to gather at the table, we're also going to come forward and we're going to create our own picture, our own 100 Tables picture, and affirm that all have a place at the table. Da Vinci did the Last Supper. We're going to do the best supper. That's just, so a bit more about that later, but in advance, a thank you to Len Shivery for being with us, and he will be taking the photo for us, and then we will be gathering at the table for communion. It is the first Sunday of the month, so that means many things for us. It means it's a Sunday to intentionally remember the ministry of the Pictou West Food Bank, and so thank you for that support. It's also Funscript Sunday, so if you didn't have a chance to speak to Beverly or Nancy before worship, please speak to them following about your Funscript orders. And it's also Coffee Hour, hosted by our Finance and Stewardship Committee. And just a little of a segue from Finance and Stewardship to the back of your bulletin. And the Finance and Stewardship, with the help of others, are putting on a chicken burger luncheon on Friday, October 17th. If you haven't had a chance to give Carolyn a call, you can speak to Carolyn after worship downstairs, and she can receive your orders. We have order forms downstairs for either delivery or takeout. So we need orders in by this coming Friday, the 10th, so we can make sure we have all our supplies. So please speak to Carolyn or anyone on the Finance and Stewardship following worship. So thank you. As always, draw your attention to a number of announcements in this morning's bulletin and a few that are not there. This morning, our bulletin is dedicated in loving memory of Charles McCarthy and Bill Cameron by Jane McCarthy and Brent Cameron. Blessed be, thanks be to God. Also, as we gather in community, as always, we uphold the various needs and the sorrows and the joys of our community and our wider community. And we certainly continue to enfold in our thoughts and prayers the family of Watson McDonald, who died earlier this week. We enfold Mary Lou, and I know many folks have been in touch with her over these days, and we continue to offer support to the family as we gather together this morning. Also, we enfold in our prayers the family of Simon McIsaac, and we enfold his family in our thoughts and prayers. And on behalf of our Ministry of Pastoral Care, I will be leading a private family gathering later on this week for the McIsaac family. As you look to your announcements, just one additional announcement that didn't get into Wednesday's calendar, and that's Wednesday evening, 7 p.m., our Ways and Means Committee is meeting. So if you're on Ways and Means or interested in Ways and Means, pencil that in. Also, our Taking Charge of Your Stress 4 sessions began last week, and we continue for the next 3 Wednesday afternoons. So if you didn't join us last week, or if you joined us last week, come and join us 2 o'clock downstairs in our church hall. Also a notation around tonight, a very special Thanksgiving benefit concert for the Pictou West Food Bank. It's at First Presbyterian Church. It's a project that they initiated and invited us to join in partnership with, and we're pleased to do that. And so we'll be gathering there at 7 p.m. tonight. And just a notation that there's free will offering, but both the session of First Presbyterian Church and the Council of Pictou United Church have made an agreement to match those funds. And so monies raised will be matched and support the ministry of the Pictou West Food Bank. And so thank you in advance for your support. An announcement. Paul Grimm often joins us on our online worship services. And for those who do not remember Paul, Paul is Sally's father, and from the valley from Berwick. They often join us in worship. But a congratulations to Paul and his 7th Wave Male Quartet. They were at a competition. Was it in New England, the competition? In New England. And they won the top seniors barbershop quartet for the Northeastern District. So all of Atlantic Canada, all of the New England states, they are top. And we've been trying to get a concert with Paul and 7th Wave, and different things keep on interfering with dates and postponement, but we will be having a concert. So when that's announced, you'll know you're coming to see a top male quartet concert. So congratulations, Paul and your friends. Also, congratulations. I know this is a big birthday week coming up. I know Jane Burris will be celebrating a birthday. Lynn Hardy will be celebrating a birthday. Gregor Hardy will be celebrating a birthday. And, oh, Stephen's not there. Stephen McKenzie will be celebrating a birthday. We'll get him next Sunday. We'll get him next Sunday. Who else? Is Laura celebrating? Laura, you're not on, you don't have your birthday on Facebook. That messes me. When's your birthday, Laura? Wednesday. Happy birthday, Laura. So I think that is, would you like to play for your own birthday? Prophetic voice of Archbishop Desmond Tutu echoes through the generations. My humanity is bound up in yours, for we can only be human together. Gather us, O God, the lost and the lonely, the broken and breaking, the tired and tortured, the anguished and aching, the done in and doubting, the waiting and wishing. Gather us in, O God, the puzzled and pondering, the proud and pretentious, the sure and superior, the never inferior, the bright and the bustling, the stirrers and shakers. Gather us in, O God, from corner and lamplight, from mansion and campsite, from fears and obsession, from tears and depression, from untold excesses, from treasured successes. Gather us in, O God. Open our eyes, transform our lives. Remind us again and again, Jesus comes on us oft in the stranger's skies. as we are gathered in community, as we gather to listen to ancient words spoken to us anew, as we gather to ponder those words and what they mean for us in our living and our loving, we give thanks for the wisdom of God in Scripture, for the wisdom of God within us, with the wisdom of God around us. Thanks be to God. As we turn to Matthew's Gospel this morning, we turn to a story that seems so very appropriate for this day and for our ministry as we consider again and again what it means to say all have a place at the table. Who is given a place at the table? Who is not? Who feels welcome at our tables? Who is not? This is what I think, a very interesting gospel story. It's a story that's told in both Matthew's Gospel and Mark's Gospel. It's an encounter between Jesus and a Canaanite woman. A Canaanite. A Gentile. Not one of the chosen ones of God. Even using that term by the gospel writer of a Canaanite conveys deep-seated historical biases and prejudices. In Jesus' day, from his Jewish traditions and views, a Canaanite was an outsider, a stranger, moreover an enemy, not among the chosen people, not worthy of God's grace, not a beloved child of God. They would be barred from any table. Canaanite, and then she's a woman. Again, in Jesus' context, that meant multiple layers of exclusion, of, in some cases, not even be considered a non-person. So a Canaanite woman. And so as you hear the story and you hear Jesus' dismissive reply to the woman, in the context of Jesus' day, that might not be surprising. But that's not the end of the story. This woman persists. This Canaanite woman claims her full humanity as a child of God. For even the dogs get crumbs from the table. Basically, she says to Jesus, build a longer table. Don't build higher walls. There is a place for all in God's beloved community. All have a place at God's table. Invite Beth to share with us our gospel story.
The gospel story is taken from Matthew 15:21 to verses 28. From there, Jesus took a trip to Tyre and Sidon. They had hardly arrived when a Canaanite woman came down from the hills and pleaded, "Mercy, Master, Son of David. My daughter is cruelly afflicted with the evil spirit. Jesus ignored her. Then the disciples came and complained. "Now she's bothering us. Would you please take care of her? She's driving us crazy." Jesus refused, telling them, "I've got my hands full dealing with the lost sheep of Israel." Then the woman came back to Jesus, dropped to her knees and begged, "Master, help me." Jesus said, "It's not right to take bread out of the children's mouths and throw it to dogs." "You're right, Master," she replied, "but even beggared dogs do get scraps from the Master's table." Jesus responded, "Oh, woman, your faith is something else. What you want is what you get." Right then, her daughter became well.
God will delight. Our song of faith affirms that we celebrate two sacraments as gifts of Christ, baptism and Holy Communion. In these sacraments, the ordinary things of life, water, bread, wine, point beyond themselves to God and God's love, teaching us to be alert to the sacred in the midst of life. So welcome, welcome, welcome. As we prepare to share in the ordinary gifts of bread and wine, which in our sharing point us to God and God's love, teaching us to be alert to the sacred in the midst of life, we pause and we honor all that is sacred and present in each of us. All that is of God, that is in me, recognizes and honors all that is of God in you. All that is of God in me recognizes and honors all that is of God in you. So let us express that to one another in a gesture of peace, be it the namaste, a handshake, a hug, however you want to express that honoring of the presence of the Christ in one another. Peace. We do this, put your hand. Peace. 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 Peace, Lord. Peace, Randy. We'll go to the next verse. Yeah. And so we prepare to gather at the table to share in the meal that unites us as members of this church community, but members of the global church community, those who say that we follow in the way of Jesus and we want to share God's love with all the world. I want to share with you a story this morning that celebrates communion. And as I share the story, images will be coming up. And I do want to give a thank you to the author of this book, Glenys Nellist, who I've never met, only met her via the internet and her books, and who generously gave us permission to use her book in worship and to use images from her book in worship this morning. And that's a very generous offer from an author who makes their living by selling books. Communion is a beautiful, holy, mysterious gift. When we gather at the table to share bread and wine, God's invisible spirit hovers in the air, just like it did 2,000 years ago when Jesus gathered with his disciples in the upper room. You see, it was evening in Jerusalem, Jesus knew he didn't have long to live on earth. What could he do to help his friends remember how he lived and loved? Jesus did something very special. In the quietness of that room, Jesus called his disciples to a table. And as they watched and listened, Jesus took bread, and he took wine, and he poured it out and gave it to his disciples. And he said, "Whenever you eat bread, whenever you drink wine, remember me." Called to the table to share the bread and wine, "I want you to remember me," Jesus said. Ever since that time, Christians around the world are called to the table too, as we celebrate communion and remember Jesus, as we hear the words that Jesus spoke to his disciples. We think about that mystery, the words that Jesus said, and how he gave his life for us, and we break the bread. There are different names for this special meal. It may be called Holy Communion, or the Lord's Supper, or Eucharist. The bread can be a large loaf, or it could be many pieces or little wafers. The wine can be wine, or it can be grape juice, or it could be grapes, and it could be in one big large cup or many little cups. We may gather around the table. We may kneel at an altar, or we may stay in our seats or come forward. But no matter what this special meal is called, and no matter how we receive it, we remember as we take the communion that Jesus chose to give his life for us. What wonderful love. Gathered at the table, God's Spirit. Gathered at the table, God's Spirit's in the air, and we drink the cup of blessing in the bread that we share. So no matter how old we are, whether you've attended a class or not, we know that in communion we are one family joined together in the love of Jesus. Together in communion, we are one family, young and old, and we celebrate together when ancient words are told. When we get ready to take communion, like today, God and Jesus know exactly how we feel. If our hearts are heavy, if our hearts are sad, if we think we've messed up or we feel unloved, God knows. But as we reach out and share in the bread and wine, Jesus reaches to us, and we are filled with love and forgiveness and hope. There's room at this table, no matter how we feel. Jesus reaches out to us in this holy meal. And so we rise from the table, and we're forgiven, and we're loved, and we're free. We leave to be the people who God calls us to be. And it is on one special Sunday every year, millions of Christians all around the world celebrate World Communion Sunday. Indoors and outdoors, and in churches and in homes, in cities or farms or lake shores or under tents, people remember Jesus when they share the bread. The bread might be a brown bread, or it might be white. It might be little or flat or fluffy, but the color and size of the bread doesn't matter. What matters is, just like the different breads, each of us are part of one big, beautiful, diverse, different family gathered around the world to remember Jesus. Gathered at the table, surrounded by God's grace, we are one Christian family in every time and place. So no matter how or where or when communion is celebrated, Jesus is with us at the table. And Jesus reaches out his hands as we reach out our hands to one another and smiles and says, "Come, come to the table." come, come to the table. And so we're going to be coming to the table. But before we come to the table, as we celebrate that all are welcome and that there's a place for all of us at this table, we're going to take a photo. Can you go to the next slide, Sandy? This was a photo that in June, our National United Church released in a big kind of public way, with a campaign affirming that all of us have a place at the table. It's a 100-table project, and that's how we got our tables that are up front. They're encouraging congregations across our country to create tables of welcome, tables that celebrate God's big, big, big love. And so, as people who are created in God's image, we're people who reflect God's love, right? When I look at you, I not only see you, but I see God. I see God's love in you. All of us, we reflect God's love. And so we are all invited to gather at the front, and we're going to create our PUC, as I said to people earlier. This painting is based off a painting called The Last Supper. We're going to make our best supper photo. And so as you're able, I'm going to invite you now to come forward, and we will get our photo, and then following our photo, bit by bit, not everyone rush to the table, I know you're hungry, but bit by bit, folks will be invited to gather at the table to share in the gifts that are at the table, either at the table if you wish, or there's napkins. You can put your communion in a napkin and return to your pew. But it's Worldwide Communion Sunday, so it's a feast. There's tortillas, and there's cornbread, and there's, what else is there? There's gluten-free crackers, rice crackers, and bread, a celebration, grapes and wine, as we celebrate the amazing love that we share as the people of God. So as Laura plays, we invite you to come forward, and we'll get ready for our photo. And if we do you want a chair for Faye? Sorry, Chris, I'm just going to get a chair for Faye. I think we should have Faye in the center. Yeah, Faye. We're going to surround you, Faye. Yeah. I can speak at this point, just, yeah, until after the photo. Upstairs is difficult. right at the table. No, I can be right here. Piano? Well, they can move in here some. There's a space here.
That's not what you said to do, though. How's my hair? Same as mine.
There you go.
If you need to brush your hair, Sandy, I got a sponge.
I like it.
Why don't we try 1, 2, 3, amen?
Amen. Amen.
Okay, so please just stay there.
Well, everybody just
Stay
stay
where
for
you
a minute.
are.
Just stay for a minute.
Sorry.
Freeze frame.
There we go. What a beautiful, 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 beautiful.
I don't know.
So we come. We come to the table to share the wine and bread. I want you to remember me, Jesus softly said. Come, come to the table. Again, come to the table. We think about the mystery, the words that Jesus said, and how he gave and lived his life as we break bread. Come to the table. Gathered at the table, God's Spirit is in the air. We drink the cup of blessing, the bread of life we share. Come to the table. Together in communion, one family, young and old. We celebrate together as ancient words are told. Come to the table. There is room at the table no matter how we feel. God reaches out to us in this holy meal. So come to the table. And we rise from the table, forgiven, loved, and freed. We leave to be the people that God calls us to be. So come to the table. Gathered at the table, surrounded by God's grace, we are one in every time and place. Come to the table. And so we are going to share in the gifts of bread and wine and grapes, of tortillas and corn chips and rice crackers. We're going to share in these gifts of God's love, for we are the people of God, called to embody that love in the world and for the world. I know you can't see it, but the front of our communion table, do you remember the words that are on the front of the communion table? Anyone?
Just do in remembrance of me.
Those words, but the new banner that's there, we see God's love. I see God's love, and we see God's love in one another. So we'll be invited to share in the communion. As I said, there's napkins if you want to take your communion back, or if you want to share at the table. But we'll have to do it about 8 or 10 people at a time. So you need to be patient. Let a few folks go, and then as the communion table frees up, new folks come to the table and gather right around the table. And we also have our other table over here, so whichever table you choose, know that you are loved. So come to the table. So we'll begin. We can maybe begin with those on the floor. Yeah.
You can have some grapes.
Yeah, yeah. And yes, and then once you've received communion, you can move back to your seats, and if you need to place your cups in the basket, there's baskets on either side.
We are going to go downstairs after.
Reminds us that there is more than enough for all. And so following communion or downstairs at coffee hour, continue to break bread, to share in the cups and in the grapes, and know that we are loved.
Mary Beth,
Mary Beth.
turn on your microphone.
Sure, I could do that.
Thank you.
Just for you. You are loved. a blessing for this day and for the days to come. Bless the hands that set this table. Bless the hands that made this meal. Bless the hands of those beside us. Bless our hands, for they and we are yours. This past week, our global community was indeed saddened by the news of the death of Jane Goodall. She was a scientist, no arguing that. However, she was more. She was a pioneer, an activist, a compassionate visionary inspiring all who would listen, a gentle disruptor, a humanitarian. She was a true example of how curiosity and compassion and kindness can change the world. She is known to often say that what we do makes a difference. The question she would ask her listeners, her audience, her readers is, what kind of difference do you want to make? What we do does make a difference. The important question is, what kind of difference do we want to make? And so as we honor her life and as we give thanks for the opportunity to be at work as God's people in the world, I invite us each day to consider that question. What kind of difference do I want to make in our world? A reminder that following worship, we're invited to gather at other tables as we gather for our coffee hour down in the hall or continue to share at this table. But before I end worship, I do want to thank Len for the challenge of getting us together and for his gifts of photography. And I do want you to know that there's not every community of faith that could happen in, what we did this morning. And so I want to thank you for your generous spirit and your willingness to go for it, to trust, to bring a good spirit to our worship and to our being here. And so thank you for that. I invite you to join in the blessing that's printed in the bulletin. Today, may I give and receive love. Today, may I work for justice. Today, may I listen and pray. Today, may I sing God's praises. Today, may I delight in God's beauty. Today and every day, may I be God's.
do 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 do